What's up, guys? So I want to show you how to use Redux Saga and React Router together. And a big use case is on login screens. So you would type in, for example, your username, your password, you'd hit submit, and then if you get the right password and username, it'd take you to a different page in your application. So what would happen is you enter whatever credentials you have here. Using Redux Saga, you make an API request to Redux or to your backend, and then if that's correct, we're going to use React Router and then go to a different page. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do right now. So here is the code for what I have up. This is a simple React application with a form component here. All this code is up on GitHub if you want to check it out. But basic form component here, and then all it does is it calls on submit, passing the username and password when this component is filled out. That's what you saw. And in our index, we're just rendering app, and in our app, we're grabbing the store. We have a Redux store because we want to use Redux Saga. Here's our store. Here we're just initializing our reducers and our sagas. And we don't have any sagas yet, but we're going to be adding one. But we are going to run our saga when we have it, and then we apply saga middleware to get that up and going. That's just initialization of Redux and Redux Saga. And then here you can see in our app, we're just doing a provider, so we can use Redux. And then our routes, we have two routes right now. We have a home and a login route. What I'd like to do is after we log in, redirect to the home page if we had correctly logged in. So as you can see, I'm using the render function on the login component here to pass props in. This is on purpose. That way we can use the history, the prop that gets passed to login to change pages. Now our login is very simple. All it is has connected to the Redux store. Nothing currently being passed to the props or functions or from the state. And then our view is literally just rendering the form right now. In our reducers, it's empty. I have a dummy reducer right now. I'm not using it for anything. And our sagas are not being used. This is user requested. This is just literally taken for Redux Saga's documentation right here. But we're going to change this to how we like it. So let's go ahead and dive into this code. So now I told you that this form component has a on submit. It's going to call a prop. It's going to call passing in the state. So we can in our login say on submit, listen for stuff. And so one of the things we can listen for is, so we can get fields. And we can say console.log fields. So the first thing we can do is just make sure we're actually getting the data we expect to get from this. So now when I submit this, I should see it go into the console. So bam, we see in the console. The next step, now that we know we're getting the data correctly, is to actually call an action. And the action will trigger Redux Saga to submit this. So I'm going to go ahead, I have an empty actions.js file. I'm going to go ahead and export an action here. Now I'm going to call my action request login. It's going to take a payload, and it's going to return two things. The payload, and then also the type of request login. Now it's good to create a const like this for your action to create constant strings that you can use and reuse in your application. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So request login, this is the action that we're going to call in our function after we submit. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the connect function that we're using here, and I'm just going to go ahead and import request login from, and if we go up two directories, we can get that from actions. And I'm going to just pass this with the bind action creators. So request login, and now in my login component, I'm going to be past that, right? Because we just connected it. So I'm going to say request login, and then here instead of console logging it, what I'll do is I'll actually just call request login, passing in fields, which is our payload. Alright, so this looks good so far. We're not doing prop validation, that's fine. Alright, so now we actually want to listen for this action that we're calling, this request login, in our Saga. So in our Saga here, we're actually going to, and this is why you want to go ahead and use the, for your types, make them constant, is so we can import them in here. So request login, we're going to import from actions, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take the latest of request login. So here is my Saga. This is what we're grabbing and running in the store. Here you want to put the action you would like to listen for. So take latest. Every time you get a new action, it'll cancel the other action if it's pending and run this one, as opposed to take every you might see instead. So what this is doing is, one, where it's asking when do I call this function here? You call it when this action is dispatched. And here you put in the Saga that you want to run. This is called fetch user right now. Let's rename this a better name. Let's try login Saga. So I'm going to rename this to login Saga here. It's going to automatically get the action passed in with the payload, so we can just pass that payload directly in here. And now here is the call function. Now the call function is where you actually do the API call. Now for us, we want to do a post request to our backend. So you can use whatever you want to make a post request. I'm going to go ahead and use fetch and do a post request, or you could use Axios or Super Agent. You can use whatever you like here. I'm going to go ahead and make this in a separate file. So I'm going to call it api.js, and I'm going to export default a function that takes a username. Actually, we won't even do that. We'll just say payload here as well. And so this is a function, and inside our function here, what we'll do is we'll actually fetch data, and we're going to make this an async function. Actually, we don't even need to necessarily. We could actually just return, but in here we're going to put our logic. And actually, let's not make this default because you might want to add more in later. So I'm going to create, so this is where we're going to actually put our fetch function. We'll do that in a second, and we're going to do export const login payload. So the payload that's going to get passed in is this right here. And so we're just going to import login from our API, just a file that we just created, and then we're going to call login here. Now, the usual thing of what you can do is after you call login, and for us, we're going to just say response here, is you can then call put, and this will dispatch an action to Redux. We don't need this for now. We'll just console.log if there's an error. So go ahead and get rid of that up there. Okay, so the only thing left to do now is to actually implement the fetch here. And I know it's fetch, and then you put in your URL, and then I forget how you actually do a post request, so I'm going to have to look that up real quick. I forget the syntax of telling fetch you want to do a post request. But I want to show you, before I do that, is what I'm using for my backend. So for this is not a video about making a backend in a registration system, so I'm just using a simple Python server. I'll show you guys the code right here. Hopefully you guys have your own backends. If not, you can do the same thing I'm doing. This is in Flask. This is just for demo purposes. But it has one route called auth. It's running on port 3030, and all it's saying is if their username and password is Bob, it has success as true. If not, it is false. So super basic server running on port 3030. So Python, start up that server, running there. Okay, back to this fetch. So JavaScript fetch post request. Because I know we need to pass a body in and stuff, and here we go. And this is exactly what we need. And I'm actually just going to return this. And then we'll automatically get the response handled okay in our Redux Saga. So posting here, like I told you guys, mine is at localhost 3030/auth. You want to point this to whatever your backend is that you'd like to make the request to. And then the data here, this is just going to be payload. And go ahead and save this. And we're getting red lines all over the place. That's because we're only doing export defaults. Let's copy this. If you're using ESLint, you can say ESLint disable, and then you can put, and we can do next line. That's how you do it. Next line. I think it's like this. There we go. And then you can put the rule you want to disable, because I want to add more exports here eventually. And we get fetch. Fetch is undefined. That's fine. But at least we don't have red everywhere. So that's how you disable one ESLint rule. If we wanted to, we could disable the whole thing, but we don't need to do that. Okay, so this looks good. Let's try it out. So we can close this. Request login unexpected token. So let's see what's going on. Looks like I did an error. Oh, this should be const. Resave it. Let this restart. And alright, so AB, this should give us a response of false. Oh, no access, control, allow origin. If this happens to you guys, you need to get a cores. The reason is because cores, I'm using a Flask server, so I don't have cores set up easily. You can also get a plugin, which usually works. Let's see if my plugin works for me. AB, internal error. Oh, looks like I messed up my server. None type object is not subscriptable. Well, let's see what's going on with my Python server. So get JSON did not work. So I'm just gonna print out request.data. I'm assuming what's happening is the data I'm sending is not in the format that my server likes. And that's just because I have a crappy server. I should have just made a good server. I need to use Python 3. But I was like, I'll just set up a super basic one. But let's run this again and see what's going on. So we can go to the logs here. None type. Okay, I printed out that thing. Oh, look, it's empty. The data's empty. One thing you can check is, so there could be two problems here. One, either we're not sending any data, or two, my server's not handling data. If I go to the network tab here, I can actually see the requests I'm making, and this is in Chrome. And if I click on this, I can see what data I'm sending over in the request headers, and I don't think I'm sending any data actually. Usually it'll show something here if I'm sending it, so it could be a problem here. Also, I'll put a link to the description for this plugin that I'm using here to get this to work. Alternatively, you can set your cores on your server. Alright, so let's do a console log. Looks like payload's not getting passed in for some reason. So let's do console.log action.payload and see what the value of that is. In our API, we're just passing payload in. That should be correct. That should be right. Okay, A, B. No, it's being sent. Should be there. But it's not. Oh, wait, I turned off the server. We're not even going to connect to it. So my server's down. That's not good. So I'll show you guys what you can do instead. So we're getting a failure, right? So we're going to this catch block. I don't know, off the top of my head, I don't know how to fix my Python, my Flask server, so I'm not going to worry about fixing that, but what I'll show you guys instead is the same thing of what you can do here. Let's say instead of on submit, so on success, we wanted to basically change. So here I wanted to go to home page. But let's say for whatever reason you would like to go to the home page instead if there's an error. Because we're getting an error, so we'll show it changing the home page when there's an error. You do the same thing if you wanted to do it here. So there's two ways you can do this, depending on how you want to do it. They're very similar. So in our view, we actually have this history component, or this, not component, but prop. So one thing we could do is in our action here, what we could do is we could do ... on our fields here. And we could also pass in history. So we're passing in our fields and the history object. So now in our saga here, in our action, we have a payload, and our payload is going to have a username, and it's going to have all that jazz. So actually, let's, just so we can destructure this easy, what I'm going to say is fields. I'm not even going to destructure. I'm not going to like spread open the fields. I'm going to have fields and history. So now in my saga here, I can destructure. I can say payload. And in the payload, I'm going to have fields and history. So now I'm going to pass fields in like normal to the call function. And then here I can say history.push slash, and the slash here will take us to the home page. Now if I wanted, I could do that here, right? And I could say if response.data.success, then we'll push to the home page, right? Of course this won't work because we're getting a failure, but I'll show you guys this working in action, right? We pass the history in here, we make the call, we're failing, so we then push to the home page. So A, B, go ahead and submit. Oh, what the heck? We just get an internal server error, and it doesn't even come here. Console.log catch. I was thinking it was going to the catch block, but I guess it's not even coming to the catch block. Yeah, look at that. It's not even going to the catch block. Alright then. In our API here, I'm assuming it's crashing here. I don't know why it's not catching the try catch. What we'll do is we'll say async payload, and we'll do our try catch in our API. So try, we're going to try fetching this. This will be const response. And actually, no, we'll just return that. Actually, const response, and we'll await this. Oops, put a wait over here. And then we're going to return response. Else, if there's an error, we're going to return. And what I can do is I can say is error false, and then the response. And here we can say is error is true and not return a response object. So try, and this should be catch, not else. Okay, so we just reworked this function. Now what we're going to do in our login is we're going to try to fetch. If we're able to fetch correctly, in our response we'll say there was not an error, return the response. Otherwise, if we get an error, which I'm thinking we're getting to this catch block, so I'm going to console log and make sure. Catching in login API. We're going to say is error. So now in our saga, instead of using a catch, since we know we're not getting here, so comment all this stuff out, right? Is we're going to say const response, and we can get rid of this. And we're going to say if response.isError. So actually we can destructure this, right? We're expecting is error and response. So if is error, then maybe we want to push for some reason to the home page. And we don't need to get the response destructured since I'm not using that right now. So alright, let's see if this guy works. So A, B, internal error. Okay, this just like straight up crashes and does not work. Oh, you know what? I'm assuming fetch 500 means it successfully works. What I think is response is actually true. I don't think we're going to the catch block. I guess for fetch, maybe if you're using a different one, it'll work better for you. Yeah, look how we redirected to the home page. Reason for that is error is actually false. So even though we're getting a 500 in the console, so we're getting 500 in the console, which made me think that we were going to the catch block, but we're really just returning here. So, but if this did work, right, so you'd still want to check. So if not is error, I guess, since we're actually working. I mean, my server's not working, but you know, it's not getting an error. Then we push. All right, so that is one way to do it. I want to show you a second way you can do this, and that's by like passing a callback. So here I can say callback, and then here I can do whatever I want. Console.log callback called, and I could do other things in here, right? And I can also say history.push that. So now I have a callback here. We're calling using our history prop here, and then we're console logging. So you can do all kinds of stuff here. But then your Saga, right? Instead of doing history, you got your callback, and then all you do is you call your callback here. So if there's not an error, you then call your callback. So all right, let's try logging in again. A, B, and callback called, and we then redirect to the home page. Bam. Alright, so that's it for this video, guys. That's how I like to handle history, changing pages with Redux Saga and React Router. Sorry I couldn't get the server to work, but that was not the main purpose of the video anyway, so it's okay. I have a stupid Python server. I shouldn't have used the Python server. I should just not Express. But you guys see how, like, look how simple Flask is. I mean, it's not working, so I shouldn't, like, show you guys how simple it is and then gloat about it, but like, look how short that is to get this set up. I guess Flask or Express is super fast, super like fast to do this too. Like, it's super simple, but yeah, not a lot of code to get this set up. I mean, it doesn't work though, but it's close to working, I think. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. All the code's gonna be up on GitHub if you want to check it out, and that's it for this video.